Hey everybody, we are back for some black metal. So this one's fun. We're going to be looking at how to use some intervals over a kind of darkish progression, which of course black metal tends to sound better that way. So let's see how we go. So what we'll do first is look at all the possible intervals we can use. Let's get rid of that. We're going to be in pretty much the 7th position. We're going to have to reach out a little bit at times. And what I've done in the Guitar Pro transcription is you'll notice that I've named the intervals for the notes. So the good thing is a lot of the time we're going along on the same note for quite a while because it is tremolo picking. A lot of these intervals just keep repeating themselves or coming up in various different combos. So we'll go through all the intervals in the 7th position using the chromatic scale. And this will be basically a combination of the major, the minor, and the harmonic minor scale. So we've got the root note 7 on the 5th. Minor 2nd, fret 8 on the 5th. Major 2nd, fret 9 on the 5th. Minor 3rd, 10 on the 5th. Major 3rd, 11 on the 5th. Perfect 4th, 7 on the 4th string. Flatted 5th or augmented 4th, fret 8 on the 4th string. Perfect 5th, fret 9 on the 4th string. Minor 6, fret 10 on the 4th string. Major 6, fret 11 on the 4th string. Minor 7, that's fret 7 on the 3rd string. And then we've got the major 7, which is next door to that, fret 8 on the 3rd string. And then we return to the root note, fret 9 on the 3rd string. So that is effectively the chromatic scale using all the possible intervals that we're going to use here. I don't know whether we use exactly all of them. I think we get pretty close to it. I guess you could go through and check that out. But the basic idea with this is to demonstrate you don't always really have to play by the rules. So some of these notes over the progression sound a little bit weird, but they still sound kind of good as well. And that's what I like to think about music as. If it sounds good, it is good. And I think that's the case here. Let's review the chromatic scale just by playing all the notes. Now, if you want to practice ear training for these intervals, it's pretty easy to do. All you would do is just play your root note first, and then play one of the notes, and then just go back and forth between them. But don't play them too fast. So let's say we want to train our ear for the major 7 interval. So I'm going to play the root note, and then fret 8 on the 3rd string. And I might finish on the higher root note at fret 9 on the 3rd. In any case, that's kind of the theoretical stuff out of the way. So what I'm going to do now is just play or go through what we do kind of in 4-bar groups. This goes for quite a while. As far as general technique goes, I'm starting on an upstroke these days, even though it's a little bit of a handicap for me in that I can't play quite as fast as I would if I started on downstroke. But what I do find by starting on an upstroke for me personally is that I don't have any of the noise issues, and I find I can get from string to string pretty easily. So I might just give you a quick demo of what I mean by that. So if I was to start on a downstroke, what I used to do was I'd sort of bring my hand down like this and then outward like that. And so if I pick, if I do the same thing starting on an upstroke, I can pretty much remain parallel. So my pick doesn't really have to slant that much, which is what I've always really preferred. I have experimented with slanting the pick. I do it a little bit, but I'm not a big fan of the big slant. So let's try the same thing now with just starting on an upstroke. So what I find for me that's challenging when starting on an upstroke is my coordination suffers a little bit. So sometimes my left hand is a little bit out of sync with my right, but I am practicing that and improving with it. But just to give you another quick example, if I was to go from, say, the 5th string to the 2nd string, and I want to do that as a string skip, it's a lot easier when I start on an upstroke than as a downstroke. So we'll try it first on a downstroke. So I can do it, but it's clunky, and I tend to sort of get stuck in the strings a bit. Now let's do it with starting on an upstroke. And what you'll notice there is I'm able to bypass those strings 99% of the time, so I can go straight from the 5th to the 2nd without even clunking into the strings in between, which for me is a huge thing. So the point of that is just to experiment with what works for you. All these years, I never really considered starting on an upstroke to make things easier on myself, but that's just the way it turned out. So that's what I do now. So let's warm up and play the first 4 bars. In this one, we're going to be using starting on the flat of 5th and then into the root. We'll be using the major 6, the minor 6, and also just the major 6 again after that. And then we'll be using the major 7 and then the perfect 5th. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. So note that that does go on for a bit on the perfect 5th, so you just got to be careful there. I find when I slow it down, it's actually harder to play because it sort of drags out, makes it a little bit more difficult to do. Let's speed it up. So what you might want to do there too is accent, if you're starting on an upstroke, what I find particularly helpful is to accent that upstroke every beat, and that way I get a sense of where I am within the bar. If I was to do it percussively, say on string 6. Let's play the next 4 bars. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. I put in an extra note there just to finish with. Let's do it a bit quicker. 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. Oops, I did a double upstroke at the end. So that's the kind of thing that happens when you're trying to change your technique. It does take a while to make adjustments. So keep that in mind. What I would suggest doing is, if you do plan on changing anything about your technique, is to film yourself doing it. If we've got the video there particularly, we'll be able to see what we're doing. And I used to do that back in the old days, just with a mirror, when I was practicing the old Steve Vai 10-hour workout with the chromatic exercise, the spider exercise, just to keep an eye on my my right hand, just to see how economical my picking technique was. So one thing you'll notice about this as we go is that there's quite a bit of repetition involved. So once we get into, bar 9, we're basically just going to do the same thing again, I think, for the most part. Let me double check. Yeah, so that time through from bars 9, 10, 11, and 12 is just a repeat of what we did in the first 4 bars. So if we skip ahead to bar 13, it's a little bit different here. And one thing you've got to be careful of here is that you change in a bit of a different spot. So rather than groups of 4, we've got an initial group of 4 on the major 6 interval, fret 11 on the 4th, but then we do 6 on the minor 3rd, and then we do another 6 on the major 3rd. Let's have a listen to that. What I might do is just do bar 13 and 14. I kind of struggle to do this bar as a loop. So these two bars, if we do them together, there's more of a context there and it's easier to play. Let's do it slower and then we'll do it quicker. Now let's do it faster. Did an extra one at the end there on the beat, that's okay. And then let's add in bars 15 and 16, which is reasonably straightforward, but you'll notice a different sequence here. So we're going to switch between root and minor second, and then we go return to the root at the end. So we're going to go from bars 13 now to 16. Now let's do that quicker. Okay, so from bars 17, this is where the piece shifts and the blast beat comes in, or at least a moderately paced blast beat. So we'll break this down a little bit, a couple of bars at a time. Actually, the first two bars are pretty easy. That's 17 and 18. We're only going to do the major 6 and the minor 6 back to the major 6. So we'll just do that pretty fast or quick, see how we go with that. And then we're going to use the harmonic minor interval, or just the major 7 interval, in more plain terms. And we're going to use that with the perfect fifth. And those are the only two notes that go there. So what we might do now is we'll slow it down. We'll do bars 17, 18, 19, and 20. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. Now let's do that a bit faster. Smooth sailing so far. Bar 21, we've got 11, which is major 6, minor 6 at fret 10, and then we're going to go back to major 6 and then the root note on the top, so that's on the 3rd string. Let's try that. Bars 21, 22. And a bit quicker. Adding in a bit more, I think we do the same thing again as what we were doing in bar, what was it, 19. So we've got the major 7 and the perfect fifth, and then we've got the minor 6 at the end of that. So that's a slight difference. What's that bar 23? Let's have a listen to that. So you'll notice in bar 23, we make the change to the flatted 6 just a little bit earlier, just to give it a bit of a sort of an off feel, which I like to do. It makes for a more uneasy sort of sound. So if we do 23 and 24, let's have a listen to that. Try it a little bit quicker. And then to finish with them, we're going to make our way down outside of the 7th position. We're still going to be using the same intervals, they're just in a different spot. So the minor 2nd's at fret 3 on the 4th, and the flatted 5th's at fret 1 on the 5th. And what else have we got? We've got the major 2nd at 2, that's on the 6th string, minor 2nd at 1 on the 6th, major or minor 6 is at fret 3 on the 5th, and then the major 6 is at just next door to that, fret 6. So what I'm going to do now is just play this end bit, because we've kind of gotten into the groove now of what we've got to do. It's really just a matter of changing the notes around. I'm going to go from bars 25 right to the very end. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a. little bit of a weird ending, but that's just the way it turned out. In any case, that wraps things up. So enjoy this because it's a really good example of how you can just muck around with, various intervals over a chord progression and just see what you come up with. It doesn't hurt to experiment, crash and burn a bit, as I like to say, or the old kamikaze, going in and having a go. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't. But more often than not, you'll get something out of it. And that's the important thing. So I'll see you soon for another lesson on another day. Thanks for supporting me on Patreon. Bye for now.